Okay, thanks very much, Victor. I've usually got a guitar when I'm this close to a microphone. Yeah, it's been a long day, and man, it's going to get a bit longer because you got me for half an hour. I'm very conscious that kind of I'm between you and the food, so I will crack on with this. I'm also noticing that there are quite a few people less here than there were this morning. So if somebody could send a piece of paper around and we'll do a roll call and then catch up with the people who aren't here. Okay, this is going to be a little challenging for some of you, I think. I'm going to use some bad words to start with. Some of them are in the title. There's management, which is, we all know is a really bad word. Quality is probably a bad word. Assurance is certainly a bad word. And the other thing is, with my current title, I was thinking about wearing a T-shirt saying "proud to be management," but didn't think it'd go down very well. But I am actually management, so that's kind of compounding the badness of the whole thing. So it's going to be a bit uncomfortable, and I apologise for that. What I'm going to do is kind of trip through the written paper, which is in almost standard English. So if you want to make sense of the thing, go back to the paper and read it rather than try and catch up with this. But I will go quite quickly through why quality has become important globally, where it's located, an institutional approach to quality, an institutional approach to KPIs, key performance indicators. Say a little bit about new information systems and things called business intelligence systems, which are coming through now. I'll make a partial case that I think we're moving from review as a way of doing certain aspects of quality to monitoring instead. I'll talk a little bit about using data to reward good performance and, in hushed tones, to do remediation. Now, I know this kind of crowd hates the word remediation, but again, I'm going to challenge you with it. I'll say that the key to all of this stuff is accountability, and probably be making the case that we haven't been very accountable as institutions in higher education, and that we need to get a lot more accountable than we are. And when I say we, that means every one of us. And I'll end off with, for about the last 20 years, I've been bagging on about professionalisation of this this thing that we do in higher education. So I'll take the opportunity to bang on about professionalisation just for a couple of minutes at the end. I've changed this a little bit this afternoon, having heard some of the things being said during the day. So I've put this kind of byline, news from the dark side, because that's what it is, really. You'll have been getting news from the kind of good and the light side of the universities. I'm giving you the other part of it, so again, it may be a bit challenging. Just to rehearse that, along with all these other old people in the audience, they're actually older than I am, by a year. I guess, we've been kind of hanging around in this area. But for me, it's 35 years. Starting as a teacher, lecturer, working my way up, then becoming an academic developer type of person, and then running academic development units, and now being a kind of out-and-out manager. And I guess all I wanted to say to you is in the progression of a journey like that, you start to see the world very differently. So a lot of the things that have been hearing today, I kind of recognise and I can locate and see why they're being said and kind of where they're at. But I think some of the things I'm going to be saying is because I'm in a different position, trying to do different things now. So anyway, let me get on with it. Okay, you probably know all of this stuff, but I'll do it anyway. Why has quality become important globally? Because of massive growth in most of the systems, not all of them, but in a lot of systems. And that's internationally. So we've now, Graham was talking this morning about, kind of vestiges of elite systems in the UK. But globally, we've kind of moved away from those systems into mass and systems-based universities. So we're not just catering for the elite anymore. And that's real. Again, 35 years ago when, some of us were coming through, the proportion of the population going on to higher education, I mean, post-war in most countries it was like 3, 5, 6%. We're now shooting at 50%. Personally, I think we'll be going for 70% before too long. So this is a huge shift that we've experienced in our lifetime. With that shift has come unparalleled diversity. They were all male to start with, when we started, and females now predominate. Diversity in all kinds of ways. We talk about generation, X, Y, and Z even now. They are different. These are quite different student cohorts. Not least of which I've put in here, including work. Because we talk about engagement and whether students are there and so on. In Australia, our experience is they're not there because they're working. I mean, basically, the funding mechanism in Australia has taken out government funding and replaced it with student funding. It's a huge shift. So if we're talking about student behaviours, we've got to understand, these realities of student behaviours. The influence of information technologies in education and in research and in support services across the board. Internationalisation of education, including the emergence of new providers. We've been hearing from some of them today. That includes corporate universities, of course, and the higher education kind of private sector, which is hugely growing in a lot of countries now. And again, it's something that when we started, it wasn't a sector. And then bringing all of this together, a focus on good management. When I started at Otago, there was a VC and a registrar. That was senior management. Okay? They then introduced this newfangled thing called a Vice-Chancellor, which caused a real big stir, because this is management gone mad. So there were 3 people doing management. Nowadays in most universities, you've got quite an extensive management structure. Why? Because the universities are multi-million-dollar enterprises. The one I just came from was a billion-dollar enterprise. Okay? You can't do this as a cottage industry. You've got to become professional. So all of these are factors that have kind of led to a concentration on quality and led to these things called quality agencies. From my perspective, for the good. In New Zealand and then in Australia, I think I've seen more change caused by quality audit and quality agencies, certainly than I ever experienced in the decades before. So again, from my perspective, I think they've done good. I'm not. I am a critic of quality agencies in some regards, but overall, to this point, I think they've been for the good. Other things that have been happening, consumer protection has become a more important part of the society, meaning that the qualifications that we're graduating students with actually count for something, and public accountability generally. How can we assure ourselves that universities are doing what we think they're doing, and what we're paying them for. To an extent, I say that, again, in Australia, the government is very much a minority stakeholder in higher education. And in Australia, about 35% of most universities' income comes from government. So these are not publicly funded, altogether publicly funded enterprises anymore. All of these things are associated with kind of wider societal trends like the spread of the market economy, the breaking down of areas of the world where market economies didn't exist, greater competition, user pays as a principle for allocation, and of course in our sector that means student pays. Increased consumer, that means student choice and sovereignty associated with market conditions, and also something we haven't seen too much of yet, but we probably will see more, increased litigation. as a consequence of failing to provide consumer type things. Now, I've heard a few people kind of talking about, you know, students aren't consumers and all that. Students are consumers. You know, let's get over it. We're in a post-structural kind of world here, so they are learners, yes, they are citizens, yes, and they are consumers, yes. We've got to be able to recognise the various identities that students have. One of them is a consumer. So these are some of the reasons for the dark side and for some of this quality stuff coming through. It's the need for systems to accommodate these changes. It's the need for better management, for data and evidence-based decision-making, for efficiencies, absolutely efficiencies, so we're not squandering the resources that we have, and for effectiveness and the demonstration, not just saying we think we're doing a good job, but we can actually demonstrate improvement and that we are doing a good job. All right, so how do we do it? There are many levels to locate quality in, from the individual teacher through the unit or course team, the department, faculty, institution, professional association, national quality agencies, and maybe even international ones down the track. In the past, I'd say that we've had an over-reliance on the individual as the mechanism for quality and on professional associations. Then there were quality agencies that came along and kind of took part of that, that responsibility with them. In the future, my prediction is that the institutional systems are going to be the ones that really carry the burden for quality. And that's really what I'm talking about today. Just some footnotes on that. Why not individuals? Why not just leave it to the academic staff to act professionally and so on? Because we don't have the systems to make sure that they do, basically. Institutional systems have not been sufficiently strong to ensure that all staff have the skills, training, and are active in improvement. It's just as simple as that. We've never found a way of doing it. Why not professional associations? Leave it to them. One reason, because many areas are not subject to accreditation. Secondly, accreditation bodies can only look at accreditation, which is a yes-no kind of thing, rather than continuous improvement. Now, a lot of them are better than that, and they're actually changing the way that they do things as well, but that's still, I think, a valid point. And thirdly, and probably more powerfully, the focus can be on the discipline rather than the institutional perspective or interdisciplinarity. That's not what they come in to look at necessarily. Okay. So we're forced down then to the institutional level. And I'm saying I think there's a shift in location away from the individual and the professional association towards the institution, and that's a good thing. I think it's something we should celebrate. There's also been a shift towards the national quality agencies, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I'll say a little bit more about that later. In the institution, there's a new emphasis now on agreed approaches to quality, to performance indicators, to targets, to remediation, to recognition of great performance, good performance, and to accountability. So I'm saying this is an institutional kind of movement. And it's one that I think we can see happening, but you know, it's kind of in process at the moment. All right, let's break those down into various parts. What about the approach to quality? There are lots of them. Most of them kind of look very similar. One of them in Australia that's got popular is ADRI, Approach Deployment Results Improvement. It's okay for auditing. It's not necessarily a very good institutional kind of summary of quality. The one that I've been using for a lot of years now is a variant of a quality cycle. It looks like this. It means that at every level, starting with the institution, you know what you're trying to achieve. You've got some plans for doing some things. So the institution, the area of teaching and learning, for example, the faculty, the school, have all got some idea of what they're trying to accomplish. They can demonstrate that they're acting on this and it's not just collecting dust on a shelf. That we're evaluating what we do in two regards. Monitoring is short-term, it's for formative purposes, and it's usually by yourself. By short-term, I mean every semester or every year. Review is pretty much the opposite. It's long-term, usually 5 years. It's for summative and formative purposes, and it's usually conducted by external people. So they're the two elements of evaluation. And very importantly, the evaluation that we do, we can demonstrate improvement as a consequence. So there's a simple quality system, and a lot of universities have something like that these days. Moving on to KPIs, where universities are moving, and my observation is towards one-page summaries of KPIs for their governing bodies, for their councils. The KPIs are grouped into categories, so there are variables within a category. There are then targets, comparators, and red light, green light type indicators. The one I'm showing you here is from Monash, which I say I left earlier this year. I'm presently erecting this kind of thing at the University of New England, but we haven't got it yet. It'll be January, February before it's up. But it gives you a good idea of what they look like. So this would be a council summary KPI chart. You'll see that, can I use this? Yeah. Here are some of the categories. Reputation being filled by Shanghai Jiaotong, Times Higher Ed, Newsweek indicators. Research, a lot of kind of income research indicators, publications, high degree by research completions, and so on. Education, kind of quality of students, as it's called, you know, the higher end students that come into the place. CEQ, course experience type student evaluation data. This is when they've graduated, the forms that they fill in, the survey they fill in. And also GDS type data. This is, are they employed? How much are they earning? Are they doing further study? That kind of thing. And then things like progression, attrition data. You'll see looking across that that over here there are targets. Most of these targets at Monash that we erected, Monash is in the group of eight research universities in Australia out of about between 38 and 42 or 3, depending which way you count it. So the target was set to be, and it actually started with research. Monash wanted to be top 3 in the group of 8 on research, and then we said, okay, that's what we want to be across the board. So we use that to define targets. You'll see that there are big areas in teaching and learning that are in the red. This is only up to 2005-06. Things actually started to turn around a little bit after this date. Other indicators, international, because that was important to this university, equity indicators, environment, advancement, and finance type indicators. Okay, so that's the idea of presenting what you're trying to achieve to your governing body, breaking it down in the teaching area, for example, course experience questionnaire, good teaching scale. You get time series on how you were performing. So, as you went down through the data, you just get more and more detail. Another indicator, generic skills in the CEQ. So it doesn't matter what the performance is, I just want to give you a flavour of how the thing goes. Overall satisfaction in CEQ, and then some GDS measures, which I won't bother too much with, attrition and so on. All right, you get the idea. Now, this is being based on information systems and new information systems that are coming through. They're being delivered through things that in Australia are being called business intelligence systems. And the universities that certainly we're working with are moving from disparate data systems to data warehouse type formations, and then a front end on top of the data warehouse to do reporting. The one that we're using is Cognos, and a lot of the sector is. So in other words, it's moving from, if you want to know how a unit or course is going, this is what you used to have to do. Go to your university planning and statistics area to get some data. Go to your student admin system like Callista for other. Go to national bodies like the Graduate Careers Australia for CEQ GDS data. Go to your Teaching and Learning Centre for student evaluation, and go to other national data sources for things like retention and progression. So you bring all of those together and you try and then assess how your unit or course was going. That's being replaced by, in all areas, so you see finance, HR, and so on, putting the data into a data warehouse and then putting the front-end tool on top of it. As I say, Cognos is one that we're using to generate different reports. So this is a new capacity. And it gives you a new capability of looking at your units and courses to see how they're going. Linked to institutional KPIs, so the whole thing comes down from the council level through to the unit level. By unit, I mean what you might be calling subject or module. Okay, the lowest kind of common denominator, the lowest building brick of the curriculum. To display relevant variables for the institution and then disaggregate them at a click of a mouse from the institution to by campus. Monash had 8 campuses, so it was important to Monash. By partners, if you're dealing with partners. By mode, if you're multimodal. By faculty, school, course, unit, and other variables if you need to. The kind of reports that are generated look something like this. This is a course monitoring profile, and again, it's a Monash-based one, where you'll see, I can't even read it, my eyes are super. Can you read it? Can you? No, okay. All right, well, there's blue stuff up there. So, I mean, but basically you've got the variables down here. Oh, I haven't got my glasses. Okay, and these are admission and retention variables, and then some CEQ variables, GDS variables, and so on. The variables down... Come on, where's the mouse? There you go. The variables down here, the actual performance on the variables, the targets that are being set, variance from the targets, and then time series. So you click on that and you get a little time series graph of the thing. Red, light, green indicators on each of the variables as to how the course is tracking. And then this is the disaggregated part. So the folder is the whole organisation. Click on it, you go to 10 faculties. Click on a faculty, you can go by mode, you can go by campus, you can go by course, down to course level in this. These are the actual metrics that were in that slide. I won't bother going through them because, again, it's just to illustrate, really. But the same kind of thing, exactly the same kind of thing at unit level or subject or module level. Different indicators, but still indicators. Again, performance targets, variance, red light, green light, and ability to disaggregate and look at the data in various configurations. And there are the metrics for the unit profiles that Monash was using. All right, so this is a new capability that we've got now. What I think it's going to mean for us is that we're going to be getting out of the review game. Reviews are 5-yearly, they're disruptive, they usually have external discipline experts who are not necessarily in tune with the institutional mission, the discourse of quality assurance, and they don't understand the data necessarily. The same actually applies to quality agencies who work on a review, 5-yearly review type process. So in my estimation, they're going to have to shift their game too. So if we're moving from review, we're going to monitoring, using the kind of information and tools I'm talking about, which needs management, policy and process development to be able to reward and to do remediation, because now we're going to be able to find out where the things are going wrong. Looking at that, actually using the data, universities have been dreadful. I mean, how many years have we been doing student evaluations of teaching and just not using the data? So I'm saying we need to use the data. Using it systematically, so each unit and course is evaluated on KPIs, using comparators. So using comparators maybe within the discipline area, the school, faculty, institution, or externally. And that's some of the work that I was starting to do at Monash. Rewarding high performance by awards, citations, organisational learning, like you are in the top 10% of units in this place. Monash had about 7,000 units a year. What are you doing to get there? Because, man, we need to know what you're doing. On the other side of it, low performance, one of the things that I've noticed in the universities that are doing this, it's actually given them the impetus to withdraw units and courses. So when you've got the data and you've got it accessible like this, there is no excuse for maintaining poorly performing units. And a lot of those units have gone as part of rationalisation. Okay? The other thing that's happened where you need to keep the unit is remediation. Now, this is the kind of point about academic development centres. I've had a number of them that I've been responsible for, ranging in budget from about $1 to $2 million to $10 million a year. Okay? The problem I have with academic development centres is I've never been able to establish what they did with the money. I've never been able to establish that it was strategically spent, that it was efficiently spent, and that it produced effective difference. So in my estimation, a lot of centres have been not strategic. The spend doesn't automatically go into the worst units, which the students are telling you every year are giving them a really bad experience. But in fact, most of the work, or a lot of the work in my observation, is with enthusiasts, not with recalcitrants. And that's where the spend should be going. So what I want to know is, if I'm giving you, say, $6 million, show me how that money is going straight to improving the worst student experience in the place. That's what I want to know. I think that's a failure of leadership in a number of ways. It's a failure of leadership in the academic development discourse, because management has kind of never been trusted very much by academic and staff developers. Again, it's seen as the dark side, and not to be kind of, you contaminate yourself if you get involved with it. But it's also a failure on the university management, that university management have not said to centres, you need to demonstrate to me how you're spending this money and how it's improving the student experience, and especially the worst student experience in the place. So countering that is a remediation process. That is having identification and agreement of the units that are performing poorly. The way of doing this is to go from the conveners making an assessment of where the units or courses are at, to the heads of schools, to the dean, to a PVC, and then an approach through the dean to the head of school and to the course coordinator or unit coordinator. So it has to come down the line, in my estimation. We've tried things where academic developers have gone into the staff of poorly performing units, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So it's a line management type of enterprise. The team then gets involved. The team may be, include people from the Academic Development Centre, the Student Learning Centre, Quality Unit. They'll start with the quantitative data that's available, and then very quickly go to the qualitative data, which for the most part will give you a pretty good clue of what's going on straight away. No extra cost, it's right there. It may be the teaching that's going wrong in the unit, but not necessarily. Having said that, again, in my experience, it usually is the teaching that's kind of stuffing up and that needs to be changed. So the remediation process then means working with the teaching staff with caution. I've put with caution because if you say to the staff, what's going wrong in this unit, they'll give you their view of the world, which is not necessarily the view of the world of the student. So you listen to the staff, but you certainly don't accept what they think is going wrong with the unit, okay? Because a lot of the time they won't be right. It's as simple as that. You then get involved in what I like as a 6-week process from data to the end of it. And usually, because these are the worst of the worst units in the place, it's dead easy. You know, we don't need the really highly evolved discourse of teaching and learning. You know, these are really, really simple things that you can put right in 6 weeks. You then monitor the results over the next couple of periods. They may be a couple of semesters or a couple of years. Monitor especially student evaluation results. The Academic Development Centre that's caught up in all of this should also gain great data to demonstrate their effectiveness and efficiency of resource use. So really, for the first time, in my estimation, they can prove why the money should be invested in them year after year. So the key is accountability. It's accountability all the way through, from the VC reporting KPIs to council, through the line management of DVC, PVC, Dean, Head of School, Course Unit conveners, and including the Academic Development Centre. There's summary reporting of what's happening, say of unit monitoring, for example, to the committee system, and depending how your committee system works, to ensure all are informed. But please note, accountability is not through committees. Committees don't do accountability, in my observation and experience over a lot of years. Okay? Line management is accountable for these things, reported to committees, discussed, made explicit through committees, but not monitored through committees, or not accountable through committees. All right, very last words, professionalisation. This would all be a hell of a lot simpler if we were professional, okay? We're not. We're the only teaching area and one of the few professional areas anywhere that's not professionalised. There's still no requirement across the board for a formal professional teaching qualification, for registration in the profession, for formal continuing professional development, for continued registration in the place. We've had various tilts at it, and you know, I've been involved in a couple over the last 20, 25 years, but we've never got it. In my estimation, that's a huge problem for us. It's a major inhibitor, as we can't take for granted common understanding of basic concepts. We can't take for granted that people have basic skills associated with what we all know, and we've known in a discourse for 40 years. You know, some of the basic elements of what makes good teaching and learning. We just can't rely on the people who are practitioners having that knowledge. So, were this in place, were we to have a professional structure, the possibilities through these new data sources and through improved accountability systems would be much easier and much faster to achieve. I think that's just one thing that's holding us back. It just kind of slows the whole thing up. So that's it. In summary, I've tried to say that quality is important globally. It's increasingly located and will be increasingly located at institutional level. Defined institutional approaches to quality are becoming much more common, and also institutional KPIs. They're based on new information systems and business intelligence type systems. I think we're going to be moving over the next decade, it probably is a decade, from review to monitoring as these processes kind of catch on. We'll be using data far more than we have in the past for reward and for remediation. And the key to all of that is accountability. And then the last point was it's inhibited by a lack of professionalisation. So again, I'm sorry to confront you with this, and I'm sure it's not kind of stuff that you wanted to hear or like to hear, and I hope it doesn't give you indigestion for the dinner. But that's kind of the news from the dark side. That's it.